She ran into the woods crying. Weeks later, her daughters were found in the ice. Welcome to the channel, where ordinary days turn into extraordinary stories. As you settle in, take a moment to let us know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far a simple story can travel. And if this kind of heart-touching journey speaks to you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We share a brand new story every day, each one filled with hope, courage, and the quiet power of second chances. So stay with us. Because tomorrow's tale might just be the one that changes everything for you. The wind cut sharp through the Wyoming sky that afternoon, cold enough to sting the skin and quiet enough that the world felt paused. In a small, weather-worn farmhouse, Luke Harris, 41 years old and worn down by more winters than he cared to count, stirred a pot of venison stew over the stove. The aroma filled the kitchen, thick and comforting, fighting off the chill that seeped through every crack in the old walls. He wore a flannel shirt patched at both elbows, jeans that had seen better days, and eyes that held stories he never told, not even to his son. From the front door came a thud, boots, then stomping. Ethan, 11 years old, breathless and wide-eyed, rushed in. "Dad," he panted, "I saw something weird by the lake." Luke didn't turn, he just kept stirring. Weird how? There were footprints, real small ones, going out on the ice, but there weren't any coming back. That's when Luke froze. His hand gripped the wooden spoon a little tighter. Then, without a word, he set it down, pulled his heavy coat from the wall hook, and was out the door in 3 long strides. The lake sat just beyond the barn, a quiet expanse of ice and snow now blurred by the oncoming storm. Snowflakes fell in wide, silent drifts, covering the world in soft white. But there they were, 2 sets of tiny footprints, side by side, walking straight onto the lake. No return. Luke knelt. "Could be deer," he muttered. But he already knew. Better. No hoofprints, just boots. Small ones. Kids. Then he ran. Each step onto the frozen lake was a gamble. It was still early winter, and the ice couldn't be trusted. The surface groaned beneath his weight, cracking in long, creeping lines, with every footfall. But Luke didn't hesitate. "Hello," he shouted into the wind. "Is anyone out there?" Then he heard it, muffled, faint, like a cry coming from beneath a blanket. He dropped to his knees, ear pressed to the ice. "Help!" came the distant, terrified voice. He didn't think, didn't plan, just slammed his elbow into the ice, again, until it cracked, then shattered. Water burst upward, freezing cold, stealing the breath from his lungs. But he dove in anyway. Beneath the surface, in that icy silence, he saw them. 2 little girls, faces pale, eyes wide with fear, hands pressed to the ice. He reached, grabbing a wrist, then another. His fingers burned from the cold, but he pulled, kicked, fought against the numbness until both girls broke the surface, gasping. On land, Ethan was already shouting into the emergency radio. "2 girls, my dad's in the lake." By the time paramedics arrived, Luke was slumped on the shoreline, soaked, shaking, blue-lipped, but alive, still holding the unconscious girls in his arms, refusing to let go. When the first medic reached him, Luke whispered, Don't let them get cold again." That day, Luke didn't just break through the ice, he shattered the silence, and what he found beneath would change all of their lives forever. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines and the occasional hiss of a heater working overtime. Luke Harris sat on a stiff plastic chair, still wrapped in a scratchy hospital blanket. His hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from everything he was still trying to process. Ethan, his 11-year-old son, sat close, his small hand gripping Luke's with surprising strength. The 2 girls were alive. That was the miracle. They had names: Lily and Maya. Twins. 6 years old. No last name. No emergency contacts. When asked who their mother was, Lily had only whispered, "She's crying. Somewhere in the trees." The words sent a chill down Luke's spine deeper than the icy lake ever could. That night, back at the farmhouse, the fire crackled hot in the wood stove. Luke had bundled the girls in Ethan's old pajamas and tucked them onto the pull-out couch with extra blankets. They didn't ask for anything, not a toy, not a story, just one quiet question before drifting off. Will Mommy find us? Luke didn't know how to answer that. He lay awake long after the kids had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling, replaying the footprints in the snow, the glassy ice, the cry beneath it. Who leaves two kids out there? And why hadn't anyone come looking? At 4:12 a.m., he gave up trying to sleep. He pulled on his boots, shrugged into his heavy coat, and stepped outside into the bitter cold. The wind had died down, but the weight in his chest hadn't. He walked to the lake, the same one he'd cracked open with his bare hands just a day before. Snow had already smoothed over the hole, like nothing had ever happened. But he knew better. Then he saw it, a shadow moving at the edge of the tree line, a figure. He froze. It was a woman, small, fragile, her coat torn, hair tangled, face pale from cold and fear. She took one shaky step forward, then another. Her lips were chapped, bleeding, her jeans soaked at the hems. But her eyes were wild with desperation and something worse, shame. Are they safe? She asked, her voice cracked and broken. Luke took a slow step toward her. They're safe, inside, warm. Her knees buckled, but she caught herself against a low pine branch. Both of them, she whispered. He nodded, and just like that she collapsed into herself, hands covering her face, shoulders shaking. Not from cold, but from release. Oh, God, thank you. She said her name was Rachel Monroe, that she had nowhere else to go, that someone had been following her, someone dangerous, that the car had died and she had panicked, told the girls to run toward the light, toward help. Luke didn't ask why she hadn't come sooner. He didn't need to. She was here now. And sometimes just showing up, broken, freezing, desperate, is the bravest thing a mother can do. That night, the farmhouse didn't feel like the same place it had the day before. The room still creaked. The stove still hissed. The wind still scraped against the old windows. But something had shifted. Rachel Monroe sat curled on the couch, her daughters, Lily and Maya, fast asleep against her sides, their small hands still clinging to her shirt. She hadn't stopped touching them since she walked through that door, not once, like she was afraid they might vanish again if she let go. Across the room, Luke Harris stood quietly by the kitchen counter, watching. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions. He just let her be a mother. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she was allowed to be that, and nothing else. The next morning, Luke poured coffee while Rachel slowly made her way into the kitchen, wearing one of Ethan's old flannel shirts over her own clothes. She looked better. Not healed, but less hollow. You didn't have to make breakfast, she said softly. You didn't have to say thank you, he replied without looking up. They shared a small smile, two people who didn't know what came next but were somehow okay not knowing. Later that day, Luke stood in the barn doorway watching the kids. Ethan was showing the girls how to build snow tunnels. Their laughter echoed across the field like something sacred. It had been a long time since that kind of sound filled this place. A long time since Luke had seen his son so open, so joyful. And Rachel, she watched too, but her eyes were never far from the tree line, always scanning, always listening. You don't have to be afraid here, Luke said, stepping beside her. She shook her head. It's not that simple. And it wasn't, because later that evening, just as the sun dipped low and the air turned sharp, Rachel saw something, movement at the edge of the trees. Her breath caught. She gripped Luke's arm. A figure stepped forward, slowly, carefully, but not the kind she feared, a deer. Luke let out a quiet laugh. Rachel didn't. You see shadows when you've lived in fear, she whispered. That night she told Luke everything, about the man who claimed to be a family friend, about how he used her grief to manipulate her, about the threats, the pressure to give up custody, the silent phone calls, the car that suddenly stopped working in the middle of a blizzard. I didn't run because I was reckless, she said, her voice tight. I ran because I was scared, and no one believed me. Luke didn't try to explain it away. He didn't offer hollow comfort. He just nodded and said, "You did what you had to do." She blinked, surprised. "You believe me?" "I do." And in that moment something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but something stronger. Recognition. The kind you only find when someone sees not just your face, but your fight. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside that old farmhouse, warmth was growing. Not just from the fire, but from the possibility that maybe, just maybe, broken people could become whole again. Together. It started with a sound. Not loud, not sudden, just different. Luke Harris was out back splitting firewood when he heard the low hum of engines, smooth and synchronized, not like any trucks from around town. He paused, axe raised midair, eyes narrowing toward the snow-covered road just beyond the fence line. And then he saw them, 10 black SUVs gliding down the gravel like shadows with tires, sleek, polished, deliberate. Their windows tinted, their movements coordinated, not local, not casual. Inside the house, Rachel was rinsing breakfast dishes, humming to herself, soft, hopeful. Lily and Maya were coloring on the floor while Ethan built another box fort out of cereal cartons. Luke burst through the door, boots still dusted in frost. "Rachel," he said, voice tight, "you need to look outside." She stepped toward the window, drying her hands on a dish towel. But the moment she saw what he saw, her face went pale. Her lips parted in a whisper. "Oh, God. Friends of yours?" Luke asked, though he already knew the answer. "No," she said, her voice sharp now. "Not friends, not even close." She moved quickly. "Girls, come with me. Ethan, stay close to them. Don't open the door unless it's me or Luke." Luke stood near the porch as the convoy rolled to a stop. No sirens, no flashing lights, just controlled power in tailored suits. When the knock came, it wasn't threatening. It was polite, 2 short professional taps. Luke opened the door to a man in his 50s wearing a long gray coat and a look that belonged more in a courtroom than on a snowy farm. "Mr. Harris?" he asked, voice smooth. "My name is Grant Sutherland. I represent the Monroe family office. I believe you've been sheltering Rachel Monroe and her children." Luke didn't move. They needed help. "And now," Sutherland said with a faint nod, "we're here to relieve you of that responsibility." Luke's jaw clenched. "They're not a burden." "No," Sutherland agreed, "but they are high profile. And right now, this," he gestured to the humble porch, "this is a liability." Just then, Rachel stepped into view behind Luke, shoulders back, chin up, voice steady. "You can come in," she said, "but only if you're here to listen." Inside, the tension tightened like wire. Sutherland stood like he owned the room. Rachel stood like she was finally ready to fight. "You weren't supposed to run," he said. "And I wasn't supposed to hand over my daughters like they were stock shares," she snapped. He sighed. "This is about optics, Rachel. The media, the board, the lawsuits." "No," she said. "This is about my children." Luke stepped forward. "If she doesn't want to go, she's not going. You understand that, right?" Sutherland blinked, measured, then reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. "Here are the terms. Full protection, controlled narrative, discreet return." Rachel didn't even look at it. "I have everything I need," she said. Then quietly she reached for Luke's hand. "Right here." And just like that, the balance of power shifted. Sutherland nodded once, tucked the folder away. "We'll be in touch." As the last SUV disappeared into the snow, Rachel stood on the porch beside Luke, her voice low but firm. "I used to think I had to choose between being a mother and being free." Luke looked at her. "And now?" he asked. She glanced at him, then at the house full of laughter. "Now I know freedom starts here." The next morning, Luke Harris stood on the porch, a hot mug of coffee warming his hands as the snow fell in soft, lazy spirals. The field beyond the barn was a quiet blanket of white, interrupted only by the sound of laughter drifting from behind the shed. Ethan, Lily, and Maya were already outside, bundled in mismatched coats, throwing snowballs and building crooked snow forts. Inside, Rachel Monroe sat at the old kitchen table, a laptop open and a stack of worn blueprints beside it. She hadn't slept much, not because she was afraid anymore, but because something else had kept her up. Possibility. When Luke stepped inside, brushing snow off his shoulders, he found her deep in thought. "You look like a woman planning a heist," he joked, setting his mug on the counter. She glanced up, eyes tired but glowing. "Something like that." He raised an eyebrow. "I've been thinking," she said, folding one of the papers, "about what happens next, about doing something real, not just surviving anymore." Luke leaned against the counter. "You're talking about staying. Not just staying," she said. "Building." She turned the laptop toward him, a document filled with renderings and sketches of open spaces, children's rooms, quiet therapy corners, gardens. At the top, in bold, "The Haven at Harris Ridge." "Started this project 3 years ago," she said. "A grant program for trauma recovery centers. We had the money, the land, the staff. Then Daniel, my husband, died. The board pulled the plug, said it was bad timing, too emotional, too risky." Luke studied the screen, then looked at her. "And now? I still have access to the funds. And this place?" She motioned toward the window. "It's everything the others weren't. Real, quiet, safe." She hesitated, then added, "I want to build the first center here. With you. If you'll let me." For a long moment, Luke didn't say anything. He looked out the window where Ethan had just been tackled into a snowbank by Maya, both of them howling with laughter. "You're serious?" he asked finally. Rachel nodded. "Dead serious." Luke let out a low whistle. "You come into my life like a snowstorm, nearly drown your kids, bring 10 SUVs, and now you want to build a sanctuary on my back 40? She grinned, that rare, full kind. "That's the short version." He smiled, slow and steady. "Well, it's a maybe, but it's the kind that leans toward yes." Over the next few days, the farmhouse filled with motion. Video calls, paper sketches, site planning, and questions from Ethan like, "Can we build tree houses too?" Rachel carried the momentum like it was in her DNA, but it wasn't the high-powered version of her from New York. It was a woman in snow boots, her sleeves rolled up, hair in a messy ponytail, laughter always nearby. She wasn't passing through anymore. She was home. And as Luke stood beside her, helping her stake flags in the frozen soil, he realized something. They weren't just breaking ground for a building. They were planting the first seeds of something rare, a future. Together. Sometimes it's not the grand gestures, but the quiet moments, the ones filled with courage, sacrifice, and second chances that stay with us the longest. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone in your life who stood tall when everything felt broken, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, what part of this story touched your heart the most? Was it the moment Luke dove into the ice, when Rachel finally came out of the trees, or when the kids laughed again like nothing had ever been broken? We also want to know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far kindness and storytelling can reach. Whether you're watching from a small town or a big city, your voice matters here. And if you've ever had your own moment of rescue, big or small, your story might inspire someone else today. Drop your thoughts below, and let's build a space where empathy lives and hope keeps showing up, even in the snow.